what do you have the least faith that we're going to come to
Epstein,
a conclusion?
for sure.
Epstein.
And I think it's because of Israel. I think that because when you really dig into Epstein, his entire network was Israel. It was clearly. Like Ehud Barak was the ex-prime minister and the ex-head of Israeli intelligence. Leslie Wexner was one of the most powerful pro-Israeli philanthropists. The whole organization was Israel.
So
and I'm not saying it was all of Israel.
It was all an intelligence gathering and
it was targeting Americans. It was targeting American officials and the American president.
Right.
And the CIA does have interest in those.
Well, you know what Ian Carroll's a proof of? When it comes to this topic, if you do it diplomatically and you don't go full on offensive, and this is coming from me, and obviously, you know, but I've gone like very aggressive with this topic. That's more off-putting to people than explaining yourself in a consumable way. That's why he got on Joe Rogan compared to all the other people that have been talking about this, because he's not here. He's not angry about it. He's just like, this is what's happening. You know, he's not going full front. So he's not calling you a sellout if you disagree. He's not calling people out. Obviously, like you guys have seen what I've done. This is the more effective method of doing it. So advice to people watching and wherever this gets shown, the best person to follow in the footsteps of when it comes to discussing this is Ian Carroll by far. Not me, not other people. He's done a better job, and he's done it on a mainstream level. He ratioed Elon Musk. He got on JRE and said facts. Responding to Elon Musk talking about AIPAC, talking about the blackmail operation, talking about USS Liberty, you know, and not in a way that's just like off-putting, like, oh, well, I'm a sellout. No, he's just saying like, this is what it is. And it makes people open up and want to have a conversation with you to learn more. I think he set the blueprint for a lot of people in the future.
Targets too, elements in the CIA does. Certainly they had help from the CIA, and certainly they had help from these other organized crime and intelligence operations. But you don't, like, so for example, Dan Bongino, the new, deputy director of the FBI, he recently had this clip that went all around where he said—
The face of Rumble now that Sneak is gone.
That he had a source that he trusted deeply. And he's an informed guy. He was at a Fox News interview, and the source told him that Epstein was working for an intelligence agency in the Middle East. And I don't know which one, but someone in the Middle East. And to be fair, we all already knew this. We already know who he worked for. At least I think so. But I'm looking at, okay, Dan, so if this giant group of Jewish billionaires is running a sex trafficking operation targeting American politicians and business people and stuff,
is it
you
Iraq?
think they're working with an Arab or Muslim nation in the Middle East? Like, you think that Leslie Wexner is devoting his entire life to philanthropies on behalf of Israel, but then he's going to work for Saudi Arabia when he's doing this trafficking ring?
Right. But if someone says to him...
See, look how receptive Joe Rogan is to that. It's beautiful. He's like, right. In another circumstance or scenario, Joe Rogan would be on the defensive, but he's just like, he's listening, he's receptive, he's engaged in the conversation. I think he did a perfect job.
That they're all working for a country in the Middle East, knowing he knows what that means, but not specifying. Doesn't he kind of have to repeat it that same way?
Well, he also has to repeat it the same way because he won't get the job if he says Israel. Exactly. Because Israel has so much control over our government.
Bro, Joe Rogan says exactly right. Bro, this is really, really good, man. I told him, I haven't known you for that long, bro, but I'm proud of you. I'm very proud that he was able to do this eloquently. And it's really going to see the ripple effect that's going to happen from this. It's opening up the conversation to so many people.
No, and I'm not saying that all Jews are in on something. Clearly.
Perfect.
Clearly.
And Joe is definitely not saying that.
Definitely not.
But
look at even Ian is giving him a way out. Ian is already knowing what Joe Rogan's thinking, and he's helping out his PR before Joe even has the chance to do it.
Israel's government is every bit as vulnerable to the deep state effect as the American government. But I would argue that Israel's government is way more vulnerable to it because of the people that founded Israel and the way it was founded. It was founded in a modern time, much more recently, it was a revolutionary founding. And I can totally sympathize with the Jewish desire to have that state. Like, I get it. But because of the way that happened, the people that founded Israel were a bunch of organized crime figures in America, the Jewish mob, that were helping with money and with arms trafficking to get the guns there because they had to have guns. And it was the Rothschild banking family sending a whole bunch of money and getting the declaration in the first place. And then the people that were there, the three different organizations, the Irgun, the Lehi group, and the Haganah, those were the three paramilitary groups that fought to found Israel, and they're the heroes of Israel. Which I understand the narrative that they're heroes, but when Israel was officially founded, they officially designated Irgun and Lehi as terrorist organizations because they had been bombing civilians. They'd been bombing British civilians. The first official act of terror before they changed the definition was the bombing of the King David Hotel, where these terrorists, these Lehi and Irgun terrorists, a bunch of different groups, the guy who planned that bombing later became the prime minister of Israel. They were bombing civilians. And like, so when those are the groups that are fighting to found that nation, even if all the Jews there are wonderful people, the leadership is inherently composed.
Now said he's the first person to graduate from JQ's university.
These people that have been deeply corrupt.
No, you don't. But like, you're right. Like everyone who talks about Israel, it's like the end goal. He just got on the biggest show in the world to talk about this. He did it. This is Jimmy Fallon of this conversation. It's over now. Like, you're not going to get to a bigger place to talk about this unless you're speaking like next to Trump. And even then, I would argue like this podcast is like, what's a bigger podcast? He really did it.
All time. And so you get this fertile ground for this kind of deep state effect to take power. And when you start to research the heads of state of Israel over history, you realize that a bunch of them.
Bro, I'm so fucking proud of him, bro. I'm so proud of this dude, man. You don't even. I did not think, bro.
Were in those groups doing those terrorist acts and have done a bunch
Impulsive
of dark
is bigger
because those were the people that were at the top of that military organization. Like those terrorist organizations reformed to form the IDF.
And what's interesting is
party.
You can talk about this now post October 7th.
It opened it wide open.
Post Gaza.
You want to know a funny story? Actually, I didn't know shit.
Joe Rogan.
And I started doing 9/11 stuff. And I was doing a 9/11 video on my YouTube, and I knew about the dancing Israelis conspiracy theory that is very much a real.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck?
Documents. And I knew that I'm not allowed to talk about Israel for some reason, and I didn't really know why. And I realized, like, I better fucking understand this thing before I crater my new channel and career on this topic I don't understand. If I'm going to take a stance against Israel at all, I should understand why and how. So I started doing research, and I shelved that research, and I switched to researching Israel and Palestine.
That's what happened to me. The reason that I was able to get shut out so quickly is because when I was getting red pilled about the world, I was live every day, and I was like, whoa, whoa! I just got screaming. If I had more time to do research and I wasn't live every day, I would have been able to navigate it better. But me getting red pilled in real time, live, that's what really messed me up. I couldn't be strategic because I was like discovering in front of an audience
history there and what's going on. And I finished the video, and it was October 6th, and I was like, I was very worried because it's like you weren't allowed to talk about it. And I had just made this whole documentary about the history of Israel, Palestine, and the propaganda and what it all was. And I published it on October 6th on my Locals channel. And I kind of had this like lean back and like, if that's the end of the ride and I get canceled for this shit, so be it. And then literally the next day, and I'm not saying that October 7th was a good thing, but I'm saying that literally the next day, the entire internet was ablaze about Israel and Palestine, and everyone was talking about it. Wow. And it was the weirdest fucking coincidence. Like, and suddenly it was like, oh, all right, let's fucking dig this thing open. Because unfortunately, it is, I mean, I think fortunately.
The beautiful thing about this is like, Joe's not disagreeing for a second. Right? He's not fully agreeing, but you can just hear that he's like, he's believing every word he's saying without verbalizing it. Besides, wow, he's not calling him nothing.
I think that the state of the Israeli influence that sustained them.
Joe's like, Jimmy, can you pull up the video of the dancing Israelis? Wow, so that's crazy. They were on a car standing in Jersey City overlooking Jimmy, pull up the video of the wooden doors. So, but how would they use gas chambers? Jamie, could you pull up the
so long that was essential to them surviving this long? I think that it has grown cancerous to the Jewish faith in general, because Jeffrey Epstein is the perfect example of this. Jeffrey Epstein was the world's most prolific and evil sex trafficker that we know of so far, ever. And he
So the IDF, this is Joe learning about Israel. The IDF, they're going to Gaza and they're murdering and murdering and murdering. And it's crazy. How could AIPAC have the biggest lobby in America? They say we're going to put America first, but Jamie, can you pull up the video of Trump saying put up America first? Wow. I mean, look at Netanyahu. He looks like an ape. Netanyahu, he looks like, it's crazy.
Clearly was a Jewish organization of Jewish people working on behalf of Israel and other groups. And so that's a dark stain on Israel and on the Jewish people if you own it. Like, if you try to defend that, that's not good. You don't
Right.
want to have to defend that.
Right.
You want to be free of that kind of shit, because the Jewish people don't believe in that. That's not what Jews are. Jews
Right.
are regular people, just like
it's the deep
everyone
state
else.
of the intelligence
Exactly.
agencies in Israel.
And the thing about Israel
Right,
is that
right.
Jewish people have every incentive to need to defend Israel, right?
Right.
Because if I'm a Jew, it's like
Look at the perfect out. Like, sympathize, empathize. You can hear in Ian's voice, he doesn't hate anyone. He's really good at doing the love speech method without, the chat and hear people saying, fuck this. Like, he's just saying, he's empathizing with the situation, post-Holocaust, they're going to want a homeland, blah, blah, blah. And he's able to talk about this without getting called any Semite, without being canceled, any racist. It's perfect, bro. It's really, the glaze aside, this is an art form.
of course you have to defend Israel. Like, that's very understandable. It's your people, and you don't want another Holocaust. Like, you don't want another, Jews have been in conflict with other people for ages because they are outsiders and because they're so different and because they grew up, and lots of reasons. But you don't, as a Jewish person, you're now faced with this choice. Do I stand by Israel always, forever, for everything, and defend everything they do? Or do I
get called a Jew, a self-hating Jew, like Dave Smith, like, what's the other guy's name? Silverstein? Dave Smith. I think that's the only.
labeled as a self-hating Jew,
Norm Finkelstein. Yeah.
like Dave Smith gets labeled,
Right.
like Glenn Greenwald gets labeled?
Right.
Do I stand against all of my culture?
Glenn
And do
Greenwald.
I get ostracized by my family and by my community? But the problem is that if you have to defend everything that Israel does, you're forced to defend this fucking deep state that is in bed with these organized crime figures.
Right.
And I would argue that Israeli deep
Right,
state is
right.
just as much in bed with all the other organized crime as our deep state is, as the Saudi deep state is.
Right.
Like, there's evil people
Right.
at the top of all these governments.
Well, the thing is, Israel is connected to one race of people.
Yeah.
It's correct. Whereas the United States, which also is involved in a lot of really fucked up things all over the world, when people think about the United States, they don't think about it as one.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yep. And
And
so
that-
it just
so
puts
that's
us
why-
all in this impossible
Ethno
situation,
state.
and it's
Right.
an impossible conversation that we
Right.
all, and I'm glad for it, because it's a maturing process, and I think we need to do it very delicately and very carefully and thoughtfully, because Jewish people are people and they're not evil.
Right.
But there are evil Jewish people, and there are evil American people, and there are evil Saudi
Absolutely.
people, and it's just, that's the way it is,
Well said.
right?
Well said.
And
Well
so,
said.
And so I welcome the
Well said.
conversation, but unfortunately, the thing for me, fortunately, is when I first researched.
Chat, am I glazing?
I came
Am I
across this
glazing,
doc-
or is this not? Chef's kiss? You like Ian Carroll? Yeah, I've had him on stream many times. You remember he was on stream with Aiden. Aiden put on the Diddy AI face, and he got pissed. Like, he just started trolling. Even I've done several pods with him. I did one with Jake Shields and stuff. We got to hang out in Vegas. He's been on stream many times. Glazeco. Chat, I don't care. I don't care. I'm happy, and I told Ian this because, like, this means so much to me, this conversation. And a big shout out to Joe Rogan, too. Big shout out to Joe Rogan for having this conversation. It's very difficult. Everybody knows how it is. And to see him, like, jump through the hula hoops of cancellation that are here for this top is just... it made me so fucking happy, bro. So W's in the chat for Joe. W's in the chat for Ian Carroll. I really like. I got to applaud, bro. I got to applaud this.
Documentary on
W's in
Rumble
the chat right
called
now.
The Occupation of the American Mind, which is a very well put together documentary that is mostly Jewish people speaking about the history of Israel and about how they realized in the 80s when there was this specific operation where they wound up bombing this refugee camp called Sabra and Shatila. Or a refugee camp in a place called Sabra and Shatila. And there was other bombing, like atrocity. It was like, I guess it was a massacre, it wasn't a bombing. And it was the first time where Western journalists had taken video cameras over there, and video feed were coming back of the conflict of what was happening. And American sentiment turned really harshly against Israel in the 80s there. And they realized, we don't need to win just the kinetic war. We need to win the ideological war on the global scale.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's the major talking points. I'm really glad to see that.